Hi, and welcome to the Right to Remain Silent podcast. I'm Jim Weber, your host and guide through actual accounts of intriguing and fascinating true crime stories as told by the law enforcement professional that experienced the event. The Right to Remain Silent podcast makes no exaggeration of fact, doesn't glamorize details, or sensationalize reality. The format here is basic. Real stories from real cops. Lastly, please don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, and share. Doing this will help me continue to provide you, the listener, with captivating and relevant true crime stories. Now, let's listen in on today's episode. On today's episode of the Right to Remain Silent podcast, we will have an in-depth conversation with Sheriff Mike Neal, and he will be discussing the 2010 West Memphis, Arkansas sovereign citizen shooting incident that resulted in the death of two police officers during a traffic stop, and the subsequent involvement that Sheriff Neal had in the hunt for the shooters. On May 20th, 2010, two West Memphis, Arkansas police officers were gunned down and murdered execution style by two members of the Sovereign Citizen Movement. And these two members were a father and son team. In this tragic and evil incident, two officers that lost their lives are Officer Bill Evans, who was 38 years old at the time, and Sergeant Brandon Powder, who was 39 years old at the time. Sheriff Neal, thanks.
Yes, sir.
For being here today. We really appreciate it.
Man, I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. All right. Well, hey, I'm just going to roll up the sleeves and we'll get into this here. And I'm going to start off with your bio. I got to say, I've been in law enforcement a little over 30 years, retired now, and I've heard a lot of bios and I've read a lot of bios about folks. But, reading yours, it's super impressive. And, I really want to say it kind of stands above and beyond a lot of the folks that I've dealt with. So I'm just really,
I appreciate that.
So
been a long 26 years, I can tell you.
I hear you. I understand. All right. Michael Kent Neal is currently on his fourth term as the sheriff of Monroe County, Arkansas, and the 26th year in law enforcement. Sheriff Neal is a former corporal for the Arkansas Game and Fish and was assigned to Lee County, Arkansas. Michael began his career in law enforcement in 1998 as a part-time officer for the Monroe County Sheriff's Department, working his way up, serving 9 years as a deputy. Michael also served 10.5 years with the Brinkley Fire and Rescue as an instructor and retired in 2009 at the rank of captain. On October 7th, 2007, Michael was hired by the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission and served 7 years as a wildlife officer. On May 20th, 2010, Officer Neal was instrumental in ending a brutal gun battle in West Memphis, Arkansas, that resulted in the death of two West Memphis police officers and the wounding of the Crittenden County Sheriff and his chief deputy. Sheriff Neal has received numerous awards, as you will see in the background on his wall there as he speaks to us. He's received numerous awards, 3 Medals of Valor, the 2011 International Officer of the Year. On February 20th, 2012, Officer Neal was awarded the Congressional Medal of Valor from the President of the United States. In 2018, Sheriff Neal's truck and rifle were inducted into the National Law Enforcement Museum in Washington, D.C., where they will be on permanent display. Today, in our episode, Sheriff Neal is going to be discussing the critical mindset needed to perform and survive in a deadly confrontation, as told based on this West Memphis, Arkansas shooting. Thanks for joining us today, Sheriff.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
Good deal. If we could just start with your background. Like, what got you into law enforcement? Where'd you start, and why did you get into law enforcement?
Well, so I was born and raised in the funeral business. I'm a licensed funeral director and embalmer. Didn't know I was a weird kid growing up, living in a funeral home. I thought everybody saw dead people. Didn't realize I was weird till I tried to start dating girls, and they were like, "Hell no, you live in a funeral home. That's weird." So, but living in the funeral business, you're around a lot of things that most people don't see or understand. And at a young age, I got involved in that. My dad was a coroner. My dad's been coroner for over 40 years now. He he was always around the police department. So I was always being drug into the back of a police car and going wherever. And I've been around it my entire life. And growing up, unfortunately, we'd have officer funerals. And I remember, well, Phil Osterman was killed here locally in a plane crash. He was a trooper. And that funeral had such an impact on me. I was a very young boy at that time. And I can remember seeing all these giant men, dressed in their Class A uniforms. And I thought, man, I want to be one of those dudes when I grow up. And that's kind of what got it all started at a young age. And unfortunately, when you get a taste of this, you can't get it out of you. It's
Right.
stuck in you. So
Right.
that's where it all began. I was probably 6, 7 years old at that time.
Well,
So
that's a young age to kind of
yeah,
realize what you're wanting to do.
absolutely. And I tried to be a good kid growing up. I didn't want to get in trouble because I knew later on I was wanting to be in law enforcement. I didn't want to jeopardize my career. And I always wanted to be a trooper, honestly. I always, man, I wanted one of those big hats that they wear. So I walk around and see my hat,
Yep, yep.
those
That
kind of things.
commands respect, doesn't it?
It does. But wound up being a game warden instead. But it's like I said, it's been 26 years, been a long career, been a good career. Seen a lot of bad stuff, and I've seen a lot of good stuff.
Yep, absolutely. Well, I wish we were talking about the good stuff today, but
Right.
we're gonna talk about some of the bad stuff that's out there in society and in the world today. And one of the incident that you were involved in. So I'm just gonna, I just want to, we'll jump right in here. We'll talk about
Sure.
what happened on that day in 2010. Um, on on May 20, for our listeners here, on May 20th of 2010, West Memphis, Arkansas, police officer Bill Evans did a traffic stop. And I would like my knowledge is based off what I've read, what I've researched, videos I've seen, but I'm not an expert on this incident. You're
Sure.
the one that was involved in this, so please feel free to correct me if I misstate something. I would prefer that you did, because I don't want to misstate the facts here and what happened. But on that date, Officer Evans did a traffic stop of a white Plymouth Voyager van, and that van was driven by an individual that was a sovereign citizen. Ultimately, the investigation determined that there were two occupants of that vehicle, a father and a son, and they were both sovereign citizens. And could could I ask you to could you give a general
Sure.
definition of what a sovereign citizen is for the listeners out there that aren't familiar?
So sovereign citizens, and in today's time, you can kind of understand some of their thinking. They they're a group of people of all nationalities. It doesn't matter skin color, none of that. It's not a race-based group or anything like that. It's a group that does not believe in government. They don't believe that the federal government has control, shouldn't have control of us, shouldn't have to pay taxes. Um, they don't believe that any federal government has any rights on them. The only government that they believe in is a sheriff, honestly, because he is elected by the people. So they do respect the sheriff, and they do listen to the sheriff. But when it comes down to state, federal, they don't believe in them, and they cause a lot of problems for
Okay,
law enforcement.
sure, sure. Hey, and like you said, some of their thinking For the most part, it's irrational thinking. But like you said, you can
Right.
see
You
somewhat.
can understand some of it. Yeah. Some of
Correct.
their things, overtaxation, things that,
Correct. Correct.
our country does tax us to pieces.
Right.
I understand that and I get that, but then they go off the rails on some things and
That's exactly right. They take it to an extreme.
right, they take it to an extreme where normal people are like, no, that's not right. And everybody tries to stay pretty much in line where they don't care. There's not a line there. They cross all the lines.
Right. Right. And that's what Officer Evans was dealing with on that traffic stop. That vehicle, if I recall, there was something with the plates. There were all the state of Ohio license plates. Ultimately, after the traffic stop, Officer Evans found that the driver didn't have a driver's license, or in the vehicle wasn't registered properly.
Yeah, but the vehicle was registered to a church, and that's common in the
Okay.
sovereign citizens. They'll try to
Okay.
hide under a church name or something like that.
Okay.
Uh, he did have a driver's license. He was just being reluctant to give them up. He knew
Okay.
he wanted his driver's license come out of Florida, so he has
Okay.
Ohio tags, Florida driver's license. There's some red flags here that aren't lining up
Sure. Okay.
that we weren't really picking up on in the beginning.
Okay. Well, thank
And
you.
the main red flag is, as soon as they were stopped, they were given the sovereign citizen paperwork. In 2010, it was still new, especially in this area. We didn't know, well, I didn't even know what a sovereign citizen was.
Right.
So when they hand those paperwork over to officers that are not educated in it, it kind of gets them off guard. And that's their plan. They want to get you off guard and intimidate you and things like that and try to quote all these laws that are not correct. And that's what they were doing to Bill Evans at the initial point of the stop,
Okay.
get him
And
off his
so-
game.
okay. And at some point, the sergeant, uh, is it Powder?
Yes, yeah,
Okay. He arrived at the scene as backup for Officer Evans at
right.
some point here, subsequent to the traffic stop and in the interaction with the individuals.
Yeah,
Ultimately,
Sergeant Powder was not called to the scene. There was no radio traffic in between the two of them.
okay.
He was just a sergeant over the drug. This is a drug interdiction team, is what it was on I-40. So they
Okay.
were stopping, everything they could find, looking for drugs, guns, human trafficking, whatever, any
Okay.
kind of bad people out there. In the game warden terms, we were kicking over rocks looking for snakes, basically is what they were doing.
Well,
Uh,
let's do this. So I don't misstate anything. How about we just have you kind of give a general explanation or description of how it unfolded from this point forward?
sure. Yeah. Yeah. So Bill stopped this van, kind of fictitious tags, things weren't lining up with it. We don't really know what the initial traffic stop probable cause was, but there was some issues on the tags of the van. He pulls it over. He'd been out on this traffic stop for quite a while, trying to figure out what was going on. Sergeant Powder is out patrolling, kind of watching over his guys, and I guess he decided to go check on Bill. So once um, Sergeant Powder gets to Bill Evans, you can see things start to change in the video, and all this is online. You can go to YouTube and watch every bit of this. It's West Memphis shootout Walmart. That's all you have to type in. You can watch all the camera footage.
Okay.
But you see when Brandon gets there, he's trying to figure out what's going on. He starts trying to take control of the traffic stop. And the whole time still has the sovereign citizen paperwork in his hand. We're still caught up on that paperwork where they should have never taken it, honestly. And that's what we train officers now is don't even get caught up with that stuff. We're not even going to listen to that foolishness.
Sure.
We're going to do what the law states and we're going to go from there, by
Right.
the law. So as that progresses, things starts heating up is what happens. And they have the suspect, the adult male, on the hood of the Tahoe. And so the camera's to his left, to his right would be the back of the van. And then Sergeant Powder. Well, directly behind the suspect's Bill Evans. He's standing behind him. And the entire time he's looking at the van. You can see him on camera watching the van. And as we watch the video, you'll see that the boy has disappeared in the van. He's not sitting in the seat. There's a lot of movement inside the van.
And
And
this
what's
is
going
a
on?
16-year-old son that's in the vehicle
Yeah,
still.
his 16-year-old son's inside the van. And what's going on is there's two dogs inside this van. It's always moving. There's always motion, commotion inside the van. So they're really not paying any attention to it. And there's also a kid in there. They're not paying attention to the kid, basically. Um, so what happens as this progresses, the boy climbs into the back. He retrieves an AK-47 where he loads and makes ready. And then he climbs back over in the passenger seat and he sticks his head out the window, makes eye contact with his dad. And he opens the door simultaneously, but he stops. He doesn't come out. He waits on his dad to make a move. So once his dad realizes he's ready, I know he's ready, he turns around, grabs Bill Evans, and the fight starts. That's when the boy exits the vehicle and begins to fire. So the first person he shoots is Bill Evans because his dad has picked him up and thrown him to the ground. So he comes out firing and shoots Bill Evans 4 times first. So think about your dynamics of what's going on here. You have a 16-year-old kid that is advancing on law enforcement. He's coming out with an AK-47. The weapon has a broke stock. He never shoulders it. He comes out firing, elbows tucked, fires on 2 officers with his dad in the middle of them. So you think about the mindset of this kid.
Right.
What is that? That's called training, is what that is. They had trained for this situation. They knew how to handle this situation. So as he's firing at Bill Evans, Brandon hears a gunfire and tries to take cover. He tries to run for cover, is what he's doing. Well, this weapon that the boy's firing is a Yugoslavian AK-47, 7.62 by 39. It's a crappy rifle. Has wolf ammo, some bad ammo in it.
Right.
The weapon malfunctions in the middle of this firefight. This kid stops, clears his weapon, and goes back to advancing. Think about that. That's training. That's tactics. I train all over the country with cops. And I've seen a lot of cops that couldn't get this done and they weren't being shot at in real life.
Right.
You know, it's just training. That's what it comes down to. And guys have to stay on their game, training all the time, whether it's mental or physical. They
Right.
got to keep that training game
Right. And
going.
from this unfortunate incident, we hope to build and learn from it for officers. And I know that's part of what you do now. I just wanted
Yeah,
to.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I'm not Monday morning quarterbacking this. This is a training
Correct. Absolutely.
for other
We
guys. This is to
learn
save,
from incidents.
yeah, save lives and, you
Right.
know, us learn and go forward. But as Brandon is seeking cover, the boy gets the weapon back up and running and starts shooting him from behind as he's running. And he's taking a lot of gunfire as he's trying to take cover. He'll run the entire length of the Tahoe, the Crown Vic, where he kneels down beside the Crown Vic, trying to assess the situation, pulls his Glock 40 cal out, and then he starts trying to put lead down range. Think about Bill or Brandon here. Brandon's mortally injured at this point. He's hurt very bad, and his mindset's still in the fight. He's still in the game. You know, he's still
Mentality.
has that warrior mindset. You know that he's still fighting. He fights to the very end. You know, he pulls his weapon. He starts firing down range. He's trying to shoot through the Tahoe and hit the suspect. And the boy gets to the back of the van or back of the Tahoe and peeks around it, fires 2 rounds through the hood of Sergeant Powder's Crown Vic. And they go through the hood, the inner fender, the fender, and strike him in the chest, knocking him backwards. And that's when the boy advances on him and executes him 3 rounds to the head with an AK. It's a very traumatic event, senseless murders, 2 good cops. The boy goes back and gets back in the van. The dad picks up sovereign citizen paperwork and throws it inside the van. And before they drive off, the boy fires 4 more rounds into Bill Evans, who's face down in the ditch, striking him 4 more times. So he's shot a total of 8 times.
This incident is just
Brutal.
almost uncomprehendable that this occurred. And not only that, that the shooter is a 16-year-old boy.
Yep. 16-year-old kid that did all this. The mindset of officers, unfortunately, we have to think about all this stuff. And it's what creates a lot of PTSD for people is being on guard all the time and having to take everyone as a threat, whether it's a kid or adult or elderly person or whatever,
I just don't think, not to harp on this issue, but I just don't know that the general public understands that mindset that you just mentioned, that as part of our job in law enforcement, we have to be ready for anything.
Right.
The worst like this incident might not occur, but if it does, we want to be ready for that.
Absolutely. And you see this a lot, and it jades officers is what it does. It calluses them, all the bad stuff that we see, and it builds us. We call it in our speaking, it's putting trash in a trash can in your brain, and it fills up. And the guys that don't empty that trash can, they lose it and they go down one or two paths, whether it's alcohol or drug abuse or suicide, unfortunately.
Right.
And now I hear people say, well, that cop was a real jerk, and well, you don't understand, honestly. You don't understand what he's having to deal with on a daily basis on top of life. You take the normal person and the stress that they have, whether it's financial or just home life, whatever. You take that stress and then you add the stress of, am I going to be killed when I get out of this car getting gas at a gas station or walking into a grocery store, just like Fordyce, Arkansas this past week, where a gunman shot all these people in a grocery store,
Right.
Or am I going to get killed on a traffic stop? Or am I going to get spit on for doing my job, or criticized because I'm doing my job,
That's
and that's the
very
kind of
tough.
things that builds up on these officers. And if they don't have the training to deal with it, man, it goes the wrong way, honestly. They teach us in the academy how to do our job, but they don't teach us how to deal with our job or deal with the aftermath of having to do our job. That's where we're failing our guys, honestly.
I would agree. That's a great point.
Yeah, it's a
So,
hard deal.
yeah, absolutely. And, it's good to see the pendulum swing a bit in the time, you and I have been in law enforcement around the same time frame, and it's good to see that pendulum has swung a bit where we're addressing those issues now. It's better, but we still got a way to go.
We got a way to go, a long
Right,
way to go.
right,
Yeah.
right. So back to the incident here. The shooting occurs. The criminals jump in their van. They don't forget to grab their sovereign citizen paperwork. They get in that van, and what happens from there?
They take off and they go into the city of West Memphis. So the best thing that happened for us is we don't have full car cameras before body cams were a big thing. So we don't have a lot of video on what actually happened once they get past the Tahoe. But there was a FedEx truck driver that pulled up behind this traffic stop. He didn't feel comfortable going around, so he puts a truck up in park and waits. So when this unfolds, he's sitting in this big truck looking down on the traffic stop and watches everything. He picks up the phone, calls 911, and he's telling them on 911. It's a horrible, horrible 911 to listen to. But he's telling them what's going on and what's happening,
He's
and he
seeing it as it
describes everything
occurs. That's
as it occurs.
okay.
Yeah, as it occurs. And once the scenes were safe, the investigators take him back there and he shows them where each officer was and how they moved and how the suspect moved and where he fired and what went on. He was a very, very good eyewitness, and that allowed us to understand what happened behind the camera.
Sure.
Uh, things that, and I'll build this up for you. The camera system that was inside their truck was brand new. They had just gotten a grant to buy these new Tahoes and the new camera systems. It's 2010. They had the brand new digital system. Didn't have the tapes in the Tahoes. It was digital. So when you pulled up to the precinct, the police department, sheriff's department, whatever, it downloaded into the department automatically.
Hmm.
So If you don't download it, it still fills up. It's still like an old tape system,
Okay.
right? If you don't download it, it fills up. Bill's system was full. It is to the point it's recording over itself. So we lost all the audio, date time information on the camera. It was so full, it was recording over old video. When the investigators jumped in the Tahoe to replay it, to see what happened, see what they were looking for, what kind of vehicle we were looking for, whatever, it would not play. It was locked completely up. When Brandon pulled up behind him, he had the old tape system in the Crown Vic, and he turned his off to save tape. That was their policy. Leave the front car camera running. Rear car didn't have to have the camera on at that point. So we were really blind of what was going on. And they really didn't go back and listen to the 911. So when they start putting out information, this manhunt starts, we didn't know what we were looking for. So these guys disappear into the city. They're wandering around. They're trying to figure out where to go. They stop and ask for directions to Walmart. They go to Walmart. You see on the surveillance video of Walmart, the boy gets out, goes inside. He's inside for about 15 minutes shopping in Walmart. His dad's outside fooling around with a van. We believe he's taking the tags off at that point. He's trying to blend in. He's backed into a parking spot. I mean, there's only two kinds of people back into a parking spot, and that's cops and criminals.
Right.
So he's backed into a parking spot. At one point, you'll actually see a deputy drive right by him. He doesn't see him. And I'll get to that in a minute, why he doesn't see him and why he's not paying attention. But they'll leave that Walmart and they'll drive behind Avalon Street, behind Walmart, into a little apartment complex where they get out, and that's where they're changing clothes, or they're kind of doing stuff around the van. And another 911 call comes in and says, you know, there's a white van back here with some guys. I don't know what they're doing. I've never seen them before. They start asking questions. Well, the dispatch starts asking, what does it look like? Does it have any stickers, any kind of emblems, any kind of information on the side of the van? And the lady's like, no, why? You know, that's dumb. No, it's just a plain white van. It's her exact words, plain white van. And the dispatcher kind of blows it off a little bit and just like, okay, see you, and hangs up. Well, I'm sure they're getting tons of calls at this point. You know, call after call after call of eyewitness this or whatever. So what had happened was when the first officer got on scene, they kind of approach and go down the ditch. You can see it on video, and they're trying to figure out what's going on. And there's a lot to that I'm going to leave out because it's pretty graphic and it's hard. But the one officer gets online or gets back on his radio, and he says, I need that vehicle. What did they have stopped? Put that information out. Shut down the bridges. So they shut down the I-40 bridge going to Nashville. They shut down the I-55 going to Jackson, Mississippi. And they shut down I-55 north going to St. Louis. So that's a cluster of highways. And if you've never been on that highway in that area, it's a mess.
Right.
When they shut all that down, they backed up traffic for years. It was horrible. You could not move.
Wow.
But it was the best thing in the world that they did. So when the dispatcher goes back and reads this information of the vehicle they had stopped, what did it come back to? A church.
Oh,
It comes back to the house of prayer and God. So they start putting out on the radio, you're looking for what? A church van.
Sure.
You're looking for a white church van with house of God and prayer written on the side of it.
Like you see on the highway every day, typically, you know, a church with a painting or the signs and the phone numbers and their website and their church name. So,
well, that's what they start putting out. And, you know, if you listen to any of the debriefs, and I've listened to all the major debriefs that's going on in the U.S., the main thing that you hear in every debrief is the breakdown of communication. That is our weak point. The breakdown of communication happens in every situation, whether it's overrun or miscommunication or misinformation. But I'll tell you, misinformation and communication will get an officer killed so fast.
Absolutely.
And that's where we were in this situation. It's a wonder more lives were not lost because of this, because they're putting out all this information. This is a white van, church van, and it just starts growing from there. It's kind of like when we were kindergartners, you were sitting in the classroom in a ring and you whispered in one ear, and by the time it got
Right.
around to the other ear, it's a total different story.
Right. Right.
This is kind of where we were falling into that trap, and it starts growing throughout the day. So from time of first incident to second incident's 90 minutes, hour and a half.
From the initial traffic stop and shooting, an hour and a half later.
Till it's
You're
over,
right.
90 minutes.
Okay.
So this is where I start getting involved. And we'll back up a little bit and talk about my history, so you can understand my thinking and my brain.
Right.
I've already told you I was a licensed funeral director and embalmer.
Right.
I spent 10 years on the fire department, cutting people out of cars, seeing a lot of bad stuff, kind of an adrenaline junkie, got on the sheriff's department the day after I turned 21, joined as a reserve, so I started training in law enforcement, fire, all of this. And, my goals were to be a trooper. So that's what I was building up to, working up to. Never could get hired. It was just the doors didn't open. God had a plan for me that
Right.
that was different from my plan, basically. And you
Takes a
want
little
something
bit for that
funny.
to materialize and
It
really,
took a long time for that to
right.
materialize, and I didn't understand it. But you think you're smart. You tell God your plans, and He'll tell you something's different. I promise you. So I wound up meeting a guy at lunch. We're in a small town. Everybody knows everybody, and everybody eats at lunch together. It's one of those kind of places. And there was a older black gentleman, and he was always clean cut, sharp as a tack all the time. And he always had a gun, a badge on. I was intrigued by him. It's
Sure.
like, this guy's put together. I want to know more about him. So I started eating lunch with him, and come to find out, he was a captain of the Arkansas Game and Fish. He was a game warden. So this goes on for years, a couple of years. I'm eating lunch with this guy and talking to him and telling him my life plans. And one day he comes in, he said, "Son, you need to be a game warden." And I said, "No, sir, I don't even know what a game warden is." I said, "You're the only game warden I've ever seen in my life, and I don't
Mhm.
know anything about that." And he's like, "Well, it's time for you to be a game warden." And he shows up at lunch one day and he slides the application across the desk. And I was always telling him, "No, I'm gonna be a trooper." And
Sure.
he's like, "You're not going to be a trooper." He
Hmm.
said, "You're going to be a game warden." He said, "I've already started your application." And he slides it across the desk and he says,
You're
"Time to
showing
be a
our
game
age
warden."
here. He actually gave you a paper application. It
Yeah,
wasn't something online.
yeah, really short our age. Yeah. So he'd already started out a written application by hand.
Wow. Wow.
Uh,
So he's
and
recruiting you.
that's where it started. And yeah, I get hired. I was number two hire in the class. There was 1,000 something people applied for 20 positions, and
Wow.
I just swooped right in. And
Sure.
all these guys were in the academy, and they were like, "Man, I've tried so long to be hired and for the game and fish." And I was like, "Oh, I just applied one time. I don't
You're
even want
like,
to be
"Well,
here."
here I am."
Yeah, I want to be a game warden. I mean, a trooper, and I don't want to be a game warden. I'm going to slip in the back door of state police is what I'm doing. That's
Right. You're
what
going to transition through there and hit the state patrol.
that was my mentality of it. But you know, when you stop, I had this life event, I guess you'd call it, running down the interstate, and you look back on your life and how everything unfolds and how the doors closed and opened. It was really crazy for me to even get hired as a game warden. I mean, I wasn't as qualified in that profession as the other guys were. I didn't know anything about game and fish. I didn't know anything about hunting.
Sure. Yeah.
And
That's a
got in.
different segment than,
That's
regular
a different
traffic.
breed.
Right. Right. It's law
Absolutely.
enforcement, but it's something it's just
There's so much more.
correct. Correct. I
So
don't think
much
people
more in there.
realize that.
So I went through the Game and Fish Academy, and a lot of people laugh and joke about game wardens, green jeans, gravel patrol cops, squirrel cops, possum cops, whatever. Let me tell you something. those guys do a lot of training. For 22 weeks, all we did was fight, shoot, and swim. Seems like
Wow.
that. I mean, it was rough. It was a
Yeah.
tough academy,
I
a
can
lot
only
of training.
imagine.
Firearms was phenomenal. Things they trained us in. In 1998, the Arkansas Game and Fish started implementing shooting through their vehicles. In 1998, shooting through their front windshields. It was
That's
unheard of.
kind of groundbreaking.
Very, very. And even today in 2024, when I teach this class, I ask people and they're like, no, we've never done it or we don't know anything about it. I'm like, wow, really?
Wow.
So for them to start at 98 is phenomenal. But that's the kind of training that they have. I mean, these guys are squared away top notch. And I'm sure the rest of the game wards across country are the same way. You would be shocked by their level of training. So I graduated the Game and Fish, and what a job! Oh my God, amazing job! You know you don't have a schedule. Your schedule is you're off. My schedule was I was off Monday and Tuesday. Those were my RDOs, regular days off, Monday, Tuesday.
Mhm.
That was my schedule. That
Wow.
was it. I had
Wow.
to turn in 80 hours every 2 weeks. They didn't care when it was.
There's a little
It was up to
leniency
you.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, oh, it was so cool, man. It was up to you as an officer to know what was going on in your area and learn how to get out and work and deal with it, and
You
figure out
you kind of dictate what schedule works best for what you're doing and for yourself.
exactly.
Sounds like.
You're the one to get out and know when they're boating or fishing or if they're poaching or,
Right.
night hunting, whatever they're
Yeah, they're
doing.
not always poaching from 9 to 5, right?
No, no, it's usually 3 o'clock in the
Late
morning.
night, right, right.
But being a game warden, man, it was so cool. You got issued a shotgun, a rifle, and a four-wheel drive. It's kind of like a Hank Williams song,
Yeah.
and that's kind of how we worked too. We had boats, if I wanted to ride a four-wheeler today, I got up and went and rode a four-wheeler. If I wanted to go for a boat ride, I went for a boat ride.
You're making me think I did things wrong in my career.
I'm thinking
Not pretty appealing.
I made the wrong choice. Somebody come up and said, man, it'd be cool if you ran for sheriff. And I'd like to slap that person because I had a really good job.
Yeah, sounds like it.
So, but going back to the situation, that week, May 20th, 2010, that was on a Thursday. So I told you earlier, my RDOs were regular days off for Monday and Tuesday.
Hmm.
I had court on Monday, which pushed my RDOs to Tuesday, Wednesday this week. So I'd been off Tuesday and Wednesday. So Thursday was my Monday, basically coming
Okay.
back.
I'm with you. Yep.
All right, everybody tracking here. So I'd had my weekend basically. Well, in life today, at that time I was married and had 3 small kids. You had to do whatever you had to do to make ends meet. I was working in the funeral business, helping my family. The night, May 19th, I worked all night long on a security, well, it wasn't all night, but doing a security gig for a pipeline that was coming through, sat and watched bulldozers,
Sure.
and I laugh and I tell this joke and everything I tell, it seems funny and like a joke, but it's really happened. But all night long, I watched Bad Boys 1, Bad Boys 2, SWAT. I was watching training videos is what I was doing. I didn't
You're
realize
right.
it.
Right. Right.
uh, you know, I was Mr. Mom. The ex-wife, you know, had a lot of growing up to do. I'm going to put it that way, and I'll leave it
Sure.
there. But I did everything for the girls, and I still do to this day. I got a 17-year-old last night to come crawl into bed because she had a breakup with her boyfriend. I mean,
Mhm.
that's the way it is. But
Right.
anyway, so being Mr. Mom, man, I got them up, I got them dressed, I took care of them, took them everything. I did everything for them, and I had a routine. And my routine was I'd get up and I'd get them dressed every morning. I'd take them to school. I'd go meet 2 other game wardens. We'd work out. We'd do MMA, and then we go to work that day. And
Mhm.
that was our routine. That's what I did. Well, this day was a little different. This is Thursday, May 20th. I've been up all night. I told the wife at the time, I said, hey, I'm tired. I'm going to sleep in for a little while. I'm going to get up, go to work later. You take the kids to school. So, I have a little, I used to, they're about grown now, but I had a name for my kids. I called them little Mitches. And I don't know if you know what a Mitch is, but that's a mini bitch. Little bitches in training is what they were. So I had three little blonde-headed Mitches running around screaming and hollering all the time, fighting and throwing things.
I have not heard
Not
that.
you feel free to use that.
Right.
But
I'll put that in the vocabulary.
yeah, the little Mitches, some of that Southern talk, but they there was no sleeping that morning. Finally, I was like, man, I'll just get up and go to work. And I thought, well, I'm going to make this an administrative day. And that was code for I wasn't going to do anything,
Right.
basically.
Right.
It's a Monday for me. I thought I'm going to run down the courthouse, check on some tickets, do some paperwork, go by the sheriff's office, hang out a little while, and call it a day.
Sure.
It was summertime. We don't have the big bodies of water here that other game wardens had. So summer times are pretty slow for us.
Mm-hmm.
We're the duck capital of the world here, and the winter times run
Yeah.
us ragged.
Right.
So
Okay.
in the summer times we did our jobs, but we didn't have to push as hard. In the winter time, you run to death, honestly. So I was going to take it easy. I thought I'll ride around the air conditioner for a little while and go home. Well, I got up and I did the same thing as every other officer does. I put my gun and my badge on to go to war. A lot of guys don't have that mindset. When you go out there, you got to have that guard up that you're at war. Somebody's trying to kill you at all times.
Right.
I didn't put my vest on because I wasn't going to do anything. I wasn't getting into nothing. I didn't need that. It's hot. I left my vest at home. But luckily, and you probably know this, when I show up, I have enough for everybody in the truck. I mean, my truck's like a war wagon,
Right.
And I knew my truck had everything in it, but I didn't put my under vest on. I just got in the truck and went to work. So my dad was out setting up for a little country service out in a little town called Morrow. And I thought I'm going to drive by and see my dad and check on him and see if he needs some help, and drove over there and checked on him. And I'd been out of the truck for 20, 30 minutes. And as a game warden, we covered 7 counties. So we had communications with all 7 counties. So the truck looked like a spaceship, all these antennas on it,
Yeah.
And when I got done talking to my dad, I got back in the truck and this incident had occurred and every one of those radios were talking. And I'm sitting there going, what on earth? I'm trying to decipher what's happening. I'm hearing SWAT teams checking en route, Bearcats. I'm hearing investigators and all this stuff checking en route going over there. And we're all nosy. That's why we're cops. We're nosy. And I was like, I've got to find out what's going on. So I picked up the phone. I called my buddy, Philip Hydron. He was Arkansas State Police SWAT CID officer. And as soon as he answered the phone, his sirens running in the background, and I was giving him shit, and I was like, hey, man, I said, you late for coffee? I hear your siren running back here, and he's like, no. He said, man, we got a bad deal. So I don't know in other states how it is, but in the state of Arkansas, if you've ever read the Bible or looked at the Bible, there's red writing in the Bible. And that is when Jesus speaks. It's written in red. So troopers are a lot like Jesus. Anything they say comes out in red. They're kind of like God. You get it? You know where I'm going? That's
I do.
mentality.
Yeah.
And it's a joke. Don't get offended. Don't come looking for me. Write me a speeding ticket. I'm just playing. But anyway, what they say, you listen and you take it as gospel, though. Really, I mean, that's real life. Trooper walks in and says, hey, this is going on. I believe it.
Right.
I call him. He says, we got a bad deal. We got 2 officers down, shot with AK-47s. This is a possible MS-13 hit on the drug interdiction team in West Memphis.
Wow.
So how do you take that?
Right.
I take that as, by God, that's what happened.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing.
Right.
So I said, all right, I'll be on the way. So I pulled my truck over, got out of my truck, got my old zip up vest, the old retired one, threw it on dusty, zip it up. And I reach up in the rack and I pull my rifle down and I hang it right here on my chest. Because I was a deputy for 9 years. I've been on a lot of manhunts. I've been on a lot of hot calls. And I knew what could happen. I wanted to be prepared for that call. And I got in that truck and I started driving. Now, I was over an hour away. I was not close. I had time to think and prepare myself mentally. Because, in life, you always got one little dude sitting on one shoulder and one little dude sitting on the other shoulder, and they're bickering back and forth.
Right.
One sitting over there going, there ain't nobody there. You've been on these calls. You're an hour away. By the time you get there, it's going to be all over with. They're all going to be gone. And then the guy in the middle is going, I'm nosy. I want to see. I want to go look. And then the other guy on the other shoulder is going, man, you should go back to bed. This is bad. Don't go over
Right.
there.
Right.
So all these three conversations, split
A
personalities,
lot
I
that
guess,
goes on, right?
arguing in your head of what's could happen, or what if this happens, or what's going to happen, how am I going to handle it? All this is, running rampant. And I remember thinking, I better call my sergeant. So I called my sergeant. Well, he was in Crittenden County, which is West Memphis. Now, he was assigned to that area. And I might have told a little bit of a white lie. It was a very small one, but I said, hey, Sarge, I know what's going on. I know what's up. I'm pretty close. Well, come on. How many game wardens do you see? You don't ever
Oh,
see a game
not
warden, right?
very, right.
All right. So I was game warden close. I wasn't nowhere near it. So
It depends on your definition, right?
yeah. It's articulation. That's what it
Correct.
is. So he says, yeah, we got a bad deal. Get up here as soon as you can. And I was like, ooh, you just gave me green light.
Yeah,
That's what you just did. Well,
exactly.
I didn't tell the game and fish that I had souped up my game and fish truck and it run 140. It would fly.
Wow.
So I light a fuse to this truck, and I'm driving and I'm what if and trying to figure out what's going on. And I'm hauling tail. And I called the ex-wife and we did not get along. It was not a good relationship. And I said, hey, looky here. So we got a bad deal in West Memphis. Got two cops down shot with AK-47, possible MS-13. I'm on my way over there. And she's like, all right, cool. Have fun. She was like, are you wearing your vest? I'm like, yeah, I'm wearing it. And I said, it don't matter what they're shooting is going to go through it anyway. And she's like, all right, have a good time. See you later. Click. So that's kind of how that went. But
I hear you.
I talked about the way things progress, right? And the way we, as kids, whispered in our ears and it made the circle. Well,
Right.
the same thing's happening, unfolding in this event. So on the other side of the Mississippi River is the third world country of Memphis, Tennessee. If you ever get a chance to go there, don't. It sucks. But inside that third world, they have helicopters and hot chicks with microphones, the news media.
Sure.
And you know how the news media thrives on us failing or getting killed or doing something wrong. They just love it when we mess up. So they're listening and they're hearing what's unfolding. So that's good for their ratings. They like to break in, when I'm watching my cousins and Swamp People, and they break in. Action News 5, only on News 5. We got 2 officers down. This is good for them. They like that. They thrive on that. So they start putting out information. Camera crews are on the way, breaking news. This was a drug interdiction team. Oh, that's good. That sounds real good. And then it's breaking news. This was possibly a hit on the drug interdiction team. That sounds really good. We like that, so they start saying that. And then they're like, this possibly is the MS-13 gang with AK-47s, and they have stolen a church van.
Mhm.
So now we're looking for a stolen white church van with the MS-13 gang in it. And this is the information that is being put out. So
Wow.
now they're putting that out to us as officers. Hey, you're looking for a stolen white church van, the MS-13 gang with House of God and Prayer written down the side of it. That's what you're looking for. Well, nobody's looking for a dirty little white Plymouth Voyager. Everybody's looking for a church van. What do you think of a church van? Big 15 passenger Ford van.
Yeah, huge
Chevy
van,
van.
all that
Yeah.
stuff splashed across the side.
We're not looking at a little Plymouth van.
Right.
Nobody's paying any attention to that. So that's the mindset that we have and what we're looking for is we're going into this. And as I'm coming into town, I've been rolling, I've been blowing by deputies and other troopers, and they're like, where's the game warden going? And
Mhm.
they used to screw with me. They'd call me and like, hey, Neal, we need some help. Can you come out and help us? I'm like, yeah, what you got? And it's like, man, we got 2 down. We got a crime scene. We need you to come out. I'm like, cool, I'll be on the way. Where's that? Well, it's 2 dead possums. We got it all roped off, that kind of stuff.
Sure.
So nobody makes fun of the game warden, right? So
Right.
I'm flying over there. I'm a man on a mission. I come sliding into West Memphis. My truck's ding, 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 ding. I was like, I done blowed the motor. What's going on? I look down. Guess what? I'm out of gas.
Mm.
And I thought, man, I'm not going to be that dude to get in a pursuit of these guys and run out of gas and have to jump in with a trooper because both of us can't fit in there with the hats they wear. I can't do that. So
Right.
uh, I slide into a gas station, and this is crazy how life works and how things happen. But I slide into this gas station. I don't know where I'm at. I just got to get gas. I jump out, my M4 swinging around. I'm trying to gas my truck up as quick as possible. I'm pissed because I got to get gas. I'm not prepared. Well, game and fish truck at 140 for an hour, burn a lot of gas.
Burn through it.
Yeah, it burnt through it. So as I'm gassing up, I don't know if you're spiritual or not. I'm not trying to push that on anyone, but I am. And God has a way of getting your attention. And this was one of those moments. And I needed it because, man, I got blonde hair. I'm ADD, dyslexic, squirrels run crazy in my head. I'm just frantic, just trying to figure out what to do. And all this stuff's running. And I look up and I have stopped at the 275-mile marker, Horizon Shell gas station. And right behind that gas station was the crime scene where 2 officers got up, kissed their families goodbye, and they're not going home. I could see the crime scene from my truck when I looked up. And I'm going to tell you that was like getting kicked in the gut. It hurt, made me mad. It fueled my fire is what it did. And I finished getting gas and I drove over the overpass looking down on this crime scene. And I was so mad. This was senseless. There was no reason for this. And I turned around, come back over the overpass again, looked at it one more time. And I remember thinking, we got to fix this. Because as cops, that's what we are. We're fixers.
Mhm.
So I turned on the service road. And as I'm driving, I'm trying to figure out how are we going to do this? How are we going to find these people? How are we going to make this right? So I have my rifle still slung hanging right here. So I'm driving with my hand on my rifle, left hand on the steering wheel, and I'm looking. I'm looking at every vehicle, every person, trying to figure out where this MS-13 gang is in a stolen church van. And as I'm driving, there's a lot of traffic on the radio the whole time. And I remember this voice, and it used to wake me up at night. And this voice comes over the radio and she says, I need available units to 798 West Service Road, Walmart. Suspects are spotted in row 12. And as I'm driving, I meet an unmarked unit. And I look up and I'm passing the Walmart. I'm like, oh shit, I'm here. Here we go.
Mhm.
And as I'm turning in, I roll my windows down. It's that dark window tint. I want to be able to see. That was my guardian angel helping me is what it was. Didn't know it, but rolled them windows down. And I'm thinking this is one of 1,000 calls we're going to go on because these guys are gone, first of all, and they're sure as hell not in the Walmart parking lot.
Right. It doesn't happen
So
that easy.
yeah, it's not that easy. I just got in town. Total of 15 minutes I'm in town from the time I got gas till I'm pulling in this Walmart. So as I'm turning into the Walmart, rolling my windows down, the unit that I met was a sheriff and the chief deputy. And they go and come down to the other entrance of Walmart and turn in. Now, the sheriff and the chief deputy were retired Arkansas State Police troopers, and they were set to retire December 31st, 2010. They were at the end of their careers, 35, 40 years in law enforcement. Their 2 biggest questions of the day, what time's lunch and what time's tee off?
Right.
They were a little complacent. So the sheriff is sitting in his office. Chief deputy runs in. W.A. Wren runs in, says, Sheriff, we got a bad deal. 2 cops are shot. Let's go. So they run out and get in their car, and they start looking. The sheriff doesn't have a weapon. He's unarmed. Chief deputy has a gun, and they're out looking for bears with one pistol, basically.
Right.
So when they pull into this parking lot, and it's the same thing with them. I know they were thinking they're not in the Walmart parking lot. This is not them. They're gone. We've been an hour and a half since the initial shooting. There's no reason for them to be here. And then this van comes off row 12, and you can watch it on surveillance video, and they block the path, head-on traffic stop. It's not a 15-passenger Ford van. It does not say House of God and Prayer on it. There's not a blinking neon light going, these are your guys.
Right.
It's just a van. They're shot immediately in their car from this van.
The sheriff
They
can
never
take
have a
that.
chance. Yes, they are gunned down immediately in their car. So the sheriff is shot with a Colt 45 through his right shoulder. WA Rand's taking 3-4 rounds of AK-47 to the chest, stomach area, not wearing a vest. They fall out of the car. So as I'm turning in the other entrance and pulling in, I hear the gunfire. I could hear it. If you've never heard an AK-47 going off in a Walmart parking lot, it's a sound you'll never forget.
Sure.
So I knew we were in it then. And as I turned right in front of the doors, that's what I'm seeing. I see the van with the door open. There's an adult male standing, shooting in between the door and the A post of the van. And that's all I can see. Other than that, I can see the officers on the other end on the ground. So in my mind, they had killed 2 officers this morning, and they just shot and killed 2 more in front of me. It was time to stop this. And the training that I'd received is you take the fight to them. And I teach this everywhere I go. The best cover is lead down range. If you're putting lead down range, that's the best cover you got. And I was also a linebacker in football, headhunter. I was going to take the fight to them.
Right.
I wasn't going to sit back and set up a perimeter and wait on them.
Not see what happens.
Yeah, I'm going. I'm coming. Here I come. And I pull my rifle up. So I'm driving with my left hand. I have my rifle in my right hand. I'm charging towards them. And in my mind, Game and Fish had already taught me, shoot through that windshield. It'll work. We did it with pistols. I had a rifle. I knew this was going to work. So as I'm coming up behind him, I thought, I'm going to roll up back here. He'll never know I'm here, and I'm fixing to pop him. He's actively killing law enforcement. I'm fixing to mow him down right here. Well, I reckon a Game and Fish truck at 55 miles an hour in a Walmart parking lot, he hears me coming, because you'll see on the video, he turns around and looks back, gets back in the van, shuts the door, and starts to back up. So I immediately transitioned from I'm going to shoot you to now I'm going to ram you, because if I told my entire story, you'd know I like to ram people. So, because it worked. I thought, well, I'll just hit you. I'm going to hit you as hard as I can.
Sure.
And at the last second, he goes to turn that van, trying to get lined up with me is what he was doing. And I thought, I'm going to hit you and you'll roll over and blow up. I just know it, because I'd watched all the movies all night long before.
Yep, that's how it happens in the movies.
Yeah, Michael Bay says they're going to roll over and blow up. So impact, we hit. State police estimated impact at about 55 miles an hour. I'm not wearing a seatbelt. My airbag doesn't deploy. I break the steering wheel with my body. Rifle still in my hand. How? I have no idea. And we're immediately on the guns at each other.
It goes from impact to shooting. Immediately.
And look, I'm going to tell you, man, I ain't that good. I sure wasn't that good 14 years ago. That was all just being used as an instrument. That was somebody else doing the work. I do remember as soon as we hit, he turns, he's at the end of my hood. I've pushed the B post into his seat. So he's literally at the end of the hood of my pickup truck, and he turns and we're eye to eye.
And is he the older one?
Yeah, he's an adult man.
Yeah. Okay.
He turns and points what looked like an RPG to me. I mean, when you're looking down the angry eye of a 410, 45 judge, it was a big barrel.
Right.
And he turned pointed the pistol at me. And when he did, I fired the first 2 rounds. And my first 2 rounds struck him here and here. It was double tap. I knew that fight was over. It was very obvious. But I didn't know who was in the van. I had no idea how many were in the van. I
Right.
knew nothing other than I could see him. I immediately start taking incoming rounds. Glass, shrapnel is hitting me in the face. I dive to my right. And when I do, my laptop desk is there inside my patrol unit, and it splits my forehead right here, cuts my head, gives me a concussion from hitting the mount. I'm getting down. So I'm taking shrapnel down my entire left side, incoming rounds. And I remember thinking, you better start shooting. And I sat back up over the dash with my rifle. I could see the fire coming off the end of his weapon. I never saw him. And I engaged the muzzle flash is what I did.
Mhm.
He's at about 8 feet, 9 feet from me, shooting a 7.62 at me, and I'm shooting a 223 back at him. I mean, it's pretty close combat.
It doesn't get any more real and serious than that.
Yeah, shit got real fast.
Right.
So bullets are flying by me. There's bullet holes in my seat where I was sitting from his AK, and I just went to gunning. Auditory exclusion is a real thing in a gunfight. I never heard my rifle, never heard his. I can hear to this day the rounds cracking coming into the truck, the popping, and I can hear my buffer spring still in my rifle because I'm laying on it as I'm firing, and it ching, 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 you know. I fired a total of 30 rounds in the firefight. Game and Fish taught us shoot through the windshield, but they didn't really give us any malfunction drills or, how to reload in a tight, confined, high stress, you're getting shot at kind of situation. So that tool was not in my tool belt. And I tell everybody, in a gunfight, you're going to do one of two things. You'll rise to your level occasion or you'll fall to it, basically. And at that point, I fell to my level of training. I could not reload my rifle. I wound up closing a bolt on an empty chamber. So it was a paperweight for me at that point, a boat anchor. And I was laying on my service weapon and my shotgun's locked in the rack. I was screwed. And I knew I was in a bad spot. And I remember thinking, put it in reverse and get out of here. I wasn't retreating. I was just going to advance in a different direction and go get all my friends and come back.
Sure. Absolutely.
So, luckily for me, the truck was still running. I put it into reverse, and you can watch the video. As I'm reversing out, I'm not looking where I'm going. I don't care. I'm still taking some incoming rounds. Wound up taking friendly fire also. Other officers have shown up. There was a total of 17 shooters.
To
in that
your
parking lot.
point, like you're not the only one there. There's other law enforcement there as
Yeah.
well. But
Other
you're
law
the
enforcement
primary
pulling in.
individual.
Yeah, I was primary at that point, but other officers are pulling in, and the firefight ensues. And there was 15 officers fire over 200 rounds there in the parking lot. So I'm taking incoming from good and bad. I did some free landscaping for Walmart, cleaned out all their bushes with my truck, and then some woman backed out and hit me, and that's my story. I'm gonna stick to that one. I didn't back into her. So
Right.
you'll see on the video. I hope you can. I don't know if you can link it on here or
We're
whatever.
going to, yes, we're gonna put the video up to when we release, so
Yeah,
people
that'd
will
be
be able
awesome.
to review.
Link that, and you'll see. I open the door, my hat falls out onto the ground. I roll out of the truck, and you'll see me duck my head immediately. And if you rewind it, look close, you'll see the smoke. There was an officer pulled up, and he starts banging a shotgun past my head. I mean, rounds right there. I felt the concussion. That's why I ducked my head like, Jesus, you about shot me in the face, I
Yeah.
felt it. And I rolled to the back of my truck, and I'm hurting, at this point. I knew I was getting hit. I didn't know how bad. I didn't know what. I had blood in my mouth and my eyes. I had a piece of glass went through my left eye.
Not to
blew my
mention
left
the
eardrum.
impact. Not
Yeah,
to mention the impact from the ramming of the vehicle.
from the hit was bad anyway. Tore up my elbow. I was cut all to pieces. I took some shrapnel in my back, my shoulder, my fat roll over here, one in my hip. So I'm laying behind my truck. I have blood. I'm trying to figure out where I'm shot. What's going on. I can't hear anything. I remember spitting glass and blood out of my mouth. I guess I had my mouth open the whole time during the shooting or something. But um, there was an officer, Nick James. He comes up and picks me up off the ground and he's screaming at me, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" I was like, "I'll be all right. You put me down. You're kind of scaring me." So I think I'm hit. And
Right.
he rips it open. He looks, he said, "No, you're good. Let's go." And he starts dragging me. And I'm like, "I'm not going back up there. You know,
Mhm.
I've had enough of that." And he's like,
Right.
"No, we got to go. We got to go." We go by and I reach in and grab my rifle out, reload, and we go up and make the scene safe and clear at that point. But it was very chaotic and very fast. 17 seconds of gunfire is all it was in between me and the 16-year-old.
Wow.
It was
Wow.
it was pretty chaotic.
When you think about this, there's so many different aspects to the whole scenario here. But a couple of the most important that I think, just hearing your story, are you addressed the threat and were vital in ending that threat. Those two individuals that had wreaked havoc and murdered, senselessly murdered people. So you addressed that threat to resolve that situation. But when I when I was thinking about this, preparing for our conversation today, my thought was also this: what if me and my family were at Walmart shopping that day, walking through that parking lot? Your actions saved, I would say, countless innocent people that were in that Walmart that had no clue what was going on there. So that is just riveting and like heroic that you ended that threat or were substantial and greatly influential in ending that threat and preventing further harm in that Walmart and Walmart parking lot. That's an incredible story right there.
Yeah, I knew if I didn't hit them and disable that vehicle, one, we were either going to be in a pursuit and shooting it out, running down the highway, and those bullets, they don't have a name attached to them. They're going to go wherever,
Right.
you know, um, or they could have gotten out and gone into Walmart, and what a
Mhm.
mess that would have been.
Right. Who knows
You
what
know,
would have happened there? Absolutely.
I didn't want any innocent life lost. That was the main thought was stop the vehicle at all cost and then, prepare for whatever come next. Unfortunately, it was a bad shootout, but luckily I was able to win the fight and go home. And 14 years now, I've been training other officers how to win the fight and go home. That's the main thing.
Absolutely. And in a bit, we're going to talk about that, about your training of other officers. But I want to maybe talk about how the aftermath of this, how you were acknowledged. I see a lot of plaques and etc. on your wall behind you there. Can you tell the listeners and me a little bit about how you were acknowledged for your involvement in this?
So that's a whole nother beast. Um, you know, it was 45 awards total that I received out of that. And I struggled with that a lot. Um, here I was just doing my job. I was doing what I thought was right, um, trying to help somebody. I didn't do it to receive an award. Matter of fact, I thought I was going to get fired, honestly. Uh, I'll tell that story. But, afterwards they loaded me up and took me to the hospital because I was beat up. And I remember later on saying, "Take me back to Walmart," and they took me back and I showed up and the carnage starts to really sink in. And there's blood everywhere. There's shot up police cars. There was bodies on the ground, and all the three-lettered alphabet agencies are walking around. And
Right.
I remember thinking, I'm gonna go to jail. I shot two people in broad daylight in Walmart parking lot. And they're gonna fire me and they're gonna arrest me. I was scared to death I was gonna be arrested or fired. But it went a total different direction, and I started receiving awards, and it's like, oh, okay, that's cool, and then it just kept going, and it kept going, and it kept going, and I was like, oh my God, stop. This, why are you doing this? Stop it. I didn't see it like everybody else. I don't see the video like everybody else. I don't see the truck like everybody else. I see it as that was dumb. That almost killed me.
Yeah. That's I can only imagine what it feels like to go through something like that. And I think,
Well, it's survivor guilt. It's what it is. Here's two guys. They did the same thing I did that day, but they didn't get to go home. I did. And
right,
then start getting all these awards and accolades and all this stuff, and I'm like, what do these guys get? What they got a box and a flag. What about them? What about their family? Why are you giving me all this shit?
yeah,
And it it really caused a lot of problems later on as it built. And as us tough guys, we're good. Hey bro, how are you today? I'm good, man. I'm
I'm
good.
good. Yeah, I'm all right.
I rubbed some dirt on it, drank a beer. I'm good, man.
Right,
Yeah. And the
right,
whole time we're suppressing all this stuff and trying to keep this image. And then, this video goes out and they're like, holy crap, this dude's, Captain America and all. Well, damn, here goes another level of pressure and problems. And now you're considered some sort of badass, and I'm not a badass. I'm just a regular kid, man. I'm just a redneck from Arkansas. And so that adds more pressure, and this reputation that you have. And it's like, Jesus, man, it becomes a lot. And if you don't figure out a way to handle it and deal with it, man, it can take its toll on you and hurt you. That's for sure.
right. I can completely understand that. But, and I'll just end this, topic by saying you were acknowledged and recognized for what you did. Because if you, on the flip side of that coin, if you were the officer conducting that traffic stop and a victim of that shooting, those officers would do just as you did to pursue those criminals. So
Absolutely.
knowing that, like, I hope that helps you. Like, that's what we do. That's what police do for one another. And individuals like you need to be acknowledged for what you did. And that's, I'll end that topic with that.
Yeah.
You're a hero and you should be rightfully acknowledged
Those,
for your
those
heroic
guys, those
acts.
guys are the heroes.
They are.
They paid
They
the
are.
ultimate sacrifice.
They absolutely are. And
They're the heroes in my
as
book.
part of that, you are
Their
as well.
their families, their families are the heroes. They're the ones that have to live on a daily basis, without them,
Right.
and try to go on with some kind of normal life afterwards. So,
Right.
I can't imagine.
And that is such a tragic, this incident affected so many different people in so many different ways
Absolutely.
for their entire lifetime.
And it's taken me 14 years to get to this point in my life too. But even on the other side, even on the gunman side, you know, their actions hurt their families and their friends also out of poor decisions. There were so many ripple effects from that, dropping the rock in the water, basically, the ripple effect that they never took into consideration out of their selfish actions. Honestly, it affected that whole side and their families too,
Yeah,
along
you're
with
right.
us. And it's
Yeah,
hard to be that way. It's hard to think like that and be respectful of that side. just because of the anger of what their actions were. But we do have to stop and think, that there was innocent people on their side of the family that were hurt too.
Right. Absolutely. Do you, would you mind just briefly mentioning, when I hear your story, I'm just shocked that all those rounds fired at you and you were not fatally wounded, fatally struck. That thankfully so.
Right.
But as you described it, you're taking shrapnel, you're taking glass, you're getting these injuries, you have a concussion, you're injured from the impact of the vehicle ramming incident. How long did it take for you to physically recover from this incident? Just physically.
You know, I, a lot of that's a blur now, but I was off 3 days and I was put back in a truck and back to work. Honestly, I was put back to work too soon.
Mhm.
I was a oddity for the game and fish. They didn't know how to handle me or what to do with me, and it started blowing up and started growing so fast. They didn't know what to do. Nobody knew. I didn't know. Physically, I mean, wounds heal, scars remain, but for months, I was picking glass out of my face. It would come to the surface or out of my hands. My hands are scarred all to pieces, and my back. Hearing in my left ear is never fully recovered. That'll never happen. My left elbow still hurts. From the impact. That's things that will always be there.
Right.
Won't ever go away. But all in all, I was back to work 3 days
I'll be done. That
and
is amazing.
bandaged up and
That's
back in the truck.
yeah,
I
that's
should have took a little more time off. But I was a tough guy and didn't realize the damage that was done mentally to me, honestly.
right.
Um,
And
and
at the
it,
time in 2010, there's no game plan, there's no book on how to deal with this physically, psychologically.
right.
When do you go back to work? How long do you wait? So I'm only assuming you're just playing it by ear. You're trying to figure it out as you go.
Yeah, we were all winging it, man. The colonel, he said, put him back in the truck immediately because if you don't, he won't come back to work. Which I have no idea. I think I would have come back to work. I think it was fine. And as I can remember, I was ready to go back to work. I thought just to get
Sure.
out and get away.
Right.
But yeah, I probably should have taken some more time off. And, years later, things in life happen. And uh, there were some events that happened in my life. And I realized, maybe I need to seek some therapy. So I started looking for therapists, and I encourage people, if you need therapy, reach out, find the right one, that
Right.
can deal with law enforcement, first responders, military that know how to deal with us. We're a special breed. We don't fit in that little box.
Right.
Um, but yeah, if you need it, reach out and get it. That's for sure.
Yeah, I would echo your sentiment there 100%. This is a difficult profession. Incidents like this unfortunately happen often to individuals around the country involved in law enforcement, and therapy can help. So I agree with what you're saying. So I would encourage that as well. Let's transition to what are you doing now?
Uh,
This was a traumatic incident. We're fast forwarding, 14 years or so. You're the sheriff there in Monroe County. Tell us a little bit about sheriffing. Tell us a little bit about, I understand you've got a instructing business that individuals can benefit and learn from the incident you went through from your experiences. So just fill us in a little bit.
Absolutely. I've been sheriff almost 10 years now. And boy, you talking about a different animal. That's a different animal. The level of stress in a sheriff is pretty tough. It's you went from worrying about yourself to now you're worrying about all your guys, and if they're coming home at night and their safety and equipment and, and then dealing with the public that are angry because they don't think you're doing your job or whatever. So being a sheriff is not for the faint at heart. And I was told in the beginning, you better get some thick skin because you're going to need it. And boy, they weren't kidding. But
Hmm.
I've got a great community. They do back us. The people of Monroe County are good to us. They're good people, and that's why I stayed here. Honestly, I could have gone anywhere in the country, the world for that matter, and went to work somewhere. But I chose to stay here in my small hometown and take care of my people, basically.
Sure.
And I've considered not running, but I've continued to run until I can find someone that I feel will come in and do the job and take care of the people when I'm gone. Because
Right.
as a sheriff, you can't just let any yahoo in there. You got to have somebody that has a mindset that he is the last resort for the people. And if you don't have that as sheriff, then you don't belong there. You're in it for the wrong reason. I am here to protect my people from whatever it is, whether it's foreign, domestic, whatever. I am the
Right.
last line of defense for my people. So
Absolutely. And I would say if I were a resident of Monroe County, Arkansas, you would absolutely have my vote.
I appreciate that. I hope a lot of them feel that way, at least 51%. So
Right, exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Tell us a little bit about your company, your training business.
Man, we got a unique company. It's NNF Training Solutions. Myself and Jason Fitzwater are the partners in the company, and what we do is we do debriefs. We do PTSD training. I debrief kind of like what we just did today, but a lot more in depth, and there's a lot more training aspects that I go over and mental preparedness. Then we roll into the PTSD and trauma aspect of it because, man, I've been picking up bodies since I was 12 years old, seeing the carnage and stuff. So I'm the poster child of PTSD. And we talk about how to deal with it, how to not have to rub the dirt on it, try to figure
Yeah.
out how to not be okay. And then we get the fun part of adding in the firearms training on top of that. We'll teach you we don't teach you how to shoot. You should be able to shoot when you get to me, and I'll teach you how to gunfight. That's what I do. And then we have a conference that we travel around and do. We're like a bunch of carnies in a van. We travel around, put on a conference where we bring in all the major incidents across the country, from San Bernardino, where they blew up the Christmas party, to Aurora Theater, Dallas shooting, Sikh Temple, Brian Murphy,
You
Pulse
have
nightclub.
you
Yeah,
have the officers that were involved in those significant events from around the country
every one of them. Yeah,
instructing at your conferences. That is impressive. Like that's not
yeah.
just
The
a
lineup is
yeah,
unreal, and they're all friends of ours. We're all friends. I've been on the circuit for 14 years, traveling and speaking. That's how we met these guys. Fitz, has put on conferences before and training, and he knew a bunch of the guys, and they've all agreed anytime we want to put one together, they'll be there. And we bring all of us together, and you get all the ins and outs and the goods and bads of everything that you've seen on breaking news on the TV,
right.
across the country. And they'll dissect the entire day and show you things that went right and wrong, and how the news media didn't get it right or whatever. It's phenomenal training,
Yeah.
some of the best.
It's I was fortunate to have the opportunity to when the Joliet training was
November,
the
I believe.
most recent conference.
Yeah, yeah,
I was fortunate to have the opportunity to attend that and listen to some of the presentations and to hear you speak as well. And again, uh, being in law enforcement for 30 years, I think I've seen and heard it all. But I sat in on your conference there that you put on, and I hadn't. I learned something. I learned multiple things just by listening to the presenters that you have at your conference. So I would encourage anybody whether you're a brand new officer, whether you're a
Well,
20.
salty dog. Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
absolutely. Whether you're a sheriff's deputy or an FBI agent, it doesn't matter, or anything in between. I think it's beneficial training. So I would encourage that. And having
it
said
really
that,
is.
do you guys have like a website or email address where listeners could
Yeah.
into that?
Our, our website's nftraining.org. And you can go on there and read about the instructors and the speakers. All the bios are in there.
Okay.
We don't put out all of the training dates on there just for security reasons, honestly. There's a lot that goes on that is not on the website. There's a place that you can contact us on there, and then we can get you the list of everything that's going on, because in today's time, we are targets.
Okay.
We have to vet, things and people that come in, and we want to make sure that we're not training the wrong people, first of all,
Right.
or be attacked during the training. So not everything's on the website. So if you get on there, it's kind of vague on scheduling, but
Sure.
reach out to us and we'll tell you where we're at and when. And hopefully if we're in your area, you can come visit and get some training, and
Yeah, that sounds
maybe
good. And
help you.
I'll put a link up to your website on the YouTube channel when we release this episode, so listeners can look into that further. Um, anything else? Anything else you wanted to
Yeah,
mention?
I'll finish with a funny story. You said February 20th, 2012, I received the Medal of Valor from the president. So I didn't get the actual president. He was busy that day, but I got the vice president, and they called me up, to be in DC and at the White House. And I get there and I look like a country pimp done come to town, man. I'm in full honor guard uniform, little redneck kid, scared to death, nervous. I get up there and they call me up to the stage, and I'm walking up there to meet the vice president. And I didn't know what to do, and I'm digging in my pocket. Don't dig in your pocket when you're walking up to the vice president. They're going to
Right.
shoot you. But I look up the Secret Service staring at me like, dude, you're an idiot. But anyway, I give the vice president a coin, and this video is out there. Matter of fact, I can send it to you if you want to attach
Oh
it. You
yeah,
can.
please
But
do.
I have it on my TikTok. But so I give him the coin, and he sticks it in his pocket, and then he grabs the Medal of Valor, and I turn toward the stage, or turn out towards the cameras and everything. And about that time, he's reaching up to put the Medal of Valor around my neck. I thought I should go to parade rest. So I stick my hands behind my back real quick, and I hit him right in the junk. Whack! And I was like, oh God, I just hit the vice president in the balls. So you'll see me grab my jacket, and I start pulling on my jacket, like, oh my God, what do I do? He puts the
Did he
Medal
play
of
it off
Valor.
pretty good?
Yeah, he played it off, and I played it off. And
Oh.
at the end of the video, you see him and Eric Holder kind of look at each other. It was Biden's who it was, but I think he told him hit me in the balls or something. You can see him kind of smirk and talk, but it's a pretty funny video. But
I'm
I
gonna have to
Forrest
check that
Gump the,
out.
yeah, I Forrest Gump the president. So
Oh man,
leave
outstanding.
it to me. Yeah,
Oh, well, Sheriff, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you sharing your story. Like I'm confident we could talk for hours about
absolutely.
this incident, and we could spiral down different rabbit holes and talk about different things. And one of the things, I want to mention again that you said was getting help. If an individual feels that they need help, back when we started out, that was kind of frowned upon, and
Right.
people looked down, and you were kind of ostracized if you even spoke about that. But in today's world, that is something that's acceptable and beneficial. And I would again echo your statement that if you think you need some assistance, don't be afraid to go find it and
Absolutely.
get that resolved the best you can. So, I want to thank you again for being a guest on the Right to Remain Silent podcast and just sharing this story. You were thrown into a horrific incident where officers were murdered, and you reacted and you addressed and assisted in what I would call it you extinguished evil. Like you addressed the threat and you extinguished this evil. And I feel better knowing that you're still out there in our communities, keeping communities safe. Um, it's a prime example that this type of mentality and behavior, and again, I'll use the word evil, evil lurks in the communities that we live in, and it strikes when you least expect it. And you hit the nail on the head earlier when you said you need to strap up daily and be ready for that evil, because at some point you may encounter it, just like you did. Um, those officers that day woke up and they put their uniforms on and they went to work to help society. You know, simultaneously that same day, you woke up and you put your uniform on, not knowing what you were going to encounter that day and what was in store for you. And just hearing your story, it you know, that incident changed your life and those around you forever. And I would say all these years later that I would like to offer my condolences to the family and friends of those officers that were slain that day. And I would like to thank you for your heroic behavior and for sharing that story today. And thank you, Sheriff. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you having us on, and I really do, and spreading the word. And you know, and you're right about the families. Bill and Brandon's families are awesome people. I have a personal relationship with them, and they're really good people. Really proud of Bill's son. He's now an Arkansas State Trooper serving over there in West Memphis. Just a stud, man. He's a great kid. Super proud of him. But yeah, they wonderful people. Bobby and Linda Powder, they're just really good people.
Good to hear, and that's touching that you keep in contact with them. That just shows your character.
Yes,
You know, that just adds to the story of Sheriff Neal. That just shows your character. I appreciate it, and I appreciate you speaking with us today.
yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
Hey, thank you.
Yes, sir. Y'all be careful.
All right, thanks. The Right to Remain Silent podcast is brought to you by Streetwise 360 Studios. I would like to again thank today's guest for sharing the story right here on the podcast. Please remember to like, follow, share, and recommend us so that I can continue to bring you high caliber guests sharing their experiences, just like we heard today. If your law enforcement agency is interested in training provided by Streetwise 360, or if you know someone that has an interesting law enforcement story to share, please contact me via the website, www.streetwise-360.com, www.streetwise-360.com.